You're listening to Murder Not Murdering with Erin,
and Autumn,
a true crime podcast about murder and murdering.
but we are not murderers.
Hey, everybody, we're back at Murder Not Murdering with Erin, and
Autumn.
that is you.
That's me. That's been me since the day I was born.
Guess what, though? We've got news.
Tell me.
You know about it. You tell me. What is our news?
Shoot. Oh, yes. We have a TikTok.
That's right. We're ticking and talking, folks.
We are ticking and talking, and I'm posting daily.
So if you're going to find us on TikTok, please follow us at
MNM.pod.
The reason why we're doing that is because they have annoying algorithms that get really mad if you use the word murder.
Yes.
So we're trying to get more followers, try to share with all of your friends, and we very much would appreciate it. Yes.
Yes. We actually, since I just pulled it up, we didn't do terrible on the one I posted yesterday.
Well, that's good.
We had 4 views the first time, 1 view the second time.
Good Lord.
4 views the third time, and 120 the fourth time.
Hey, we're doing something, you guys.
And we have 2 followers on TikTok.
I'm pretty positive those are you and me.
They are. They sure are.
Our loyal followers.
We have to start somewhere, but our Instagram is pretty poppin'. So if you like Instagram, keep following us there. But we have opened the gate to TikTok.
Yes, we have.
And if you see things like the word unalive, it's because the algorithm on TikTok, they just filter a lot of things.
Yeah, they don't like all of our murder chat.
No, they don't. And it's hard when that's literally our brand name.
There's so much true crime on there.
So much. But all of them, because I was researching, I went down a rabbit hole. When they're talking and when their captions are coming up on the screen, they have like stars and then the word, or they use unalive.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
It's definitely a well-known thing, and we're just trying to get around it because Instagram doesn't care. Instagram will let you say murder. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I think it's fine.
But anyway, our news.
That's our big news. We have TikTok. Autumn does all of the postings because I am a grandma.
She is not a grandma. She's actually really good at it, but
she refuses to learn. And I do have other businesses.
So I have to post. I take one for the team.
I'm posting all the time, guys, everywhere.
Yes. Go follow her businesses as well, too.
Follow me on Southgate Roller Rink and at Booho White Center, and you will find all of my postings.
Yes. And if you do go to Booho, it is the best food.
Delicious.
Honestly, it is so good.
The Wagyu steak salad we had last week was excellent.
Well, that does sound really good.
I don't eat beef, but I got mine without it. And it was so good. The tomatoes were marinated, and the way that the chef put it together, it was just awesome.
Sounds really good. Do you still have the shrimp ceviche there?
No, but we're going to bring it back for a limited run during summer.
Okay.
We do that one always in the summertime.
That is so good. That's like my favorite ceviche.
Yeah, we do that. And then we do a weekly special every week. And so we always like have something new. That way you're not just coming in and having the same food every time. You have options.
I like that.
Yeah. Anywho, we are going to jump into 2 new cases. Autumn goes first this time. And we were just discussing the names that we chose for our cases. And I think they both sound really interesting this week. And we don't always name them. Sometimes it doesn't work or it gives too much away. So we don't always use a name.
No, but this week we did. This was the week to use the names, I felt like.
What is the title of your case, Autumn?
The Man Who Erased Himself.
I am intrigued. I really want to know.
This one is wild. And actually very sad, but insane. And Dustin actually was like, "Did you hear about this case?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I know that one." And he's like, "You should do that." And I'm like, "Okay, that sounds good to me."
I love that Dustin picked one for you.
Yeah, he did. And I'm excited because it's a good one.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear it.
Well, you're about to. So sit down and listen.
You know I'm sitting.
This is true. We're not standing. We're not those kind of girlies.
No.
Okay, without further ado, I'm diving in. This is The Man Who Erased Himself. There's something chilling about a man who can vanish without a trace. More so when he leaves 5 bodies behind and not a single clue to where he's gone. This is the story of John Emile List, a father, a husband, a war veteran, a man who blended into American suburbia until one day in 1971 when he wiped his entire family off the map.
Jesus.
For nearly 18 years, John List lived a second life. Remarried, went to church, barbecued with the neighbors, and all the while, just under the surface, he carried a truth too horrible to imagine. John List was born in 1925 in Bay City, Michigan, an only child in a devout Lutheran household. From the outside, his life was predictable, Midwestern, methodical. His father was a Sunday school teacher, and so was John. After graduating high school in 1943, he joined the Army, served in World War II, then went on to earn degrees in business and accounting. He was smart, quiet, and the kind of man who followed rules, the kind of man who didn't draw attention. But beneath that tidy exterior, John List was building a life out of pressure and pride, and later, secrets. In 1951, while stationed at Fort Eustis, Virginia, John met Helen Taylor, a widow with a young daughter. They married quickly. Helen was older, more experienced, and troubled in ways John wouldn't understand for years. She'd been sick, very sick, but never told John how sick. Not until it was far too late. Over the next decade, they built a family. 3 children of their own, plus Helen's daughter Brenda, who later left the home. John worked his way up through accounting jobs in California, Michigan, New York, always looking for the next step, always chasing stability. By 1965, they were in Westfield, New Jersey. John had taken a prestigious job as vice president of a bank. The family moved into a 19-room Victorian mansion. They even named it Breeze Knoll. It had a ballroom with stained glass. It had old money charm. But money was exactly what they didn't have. The bank job didn't last. Helen's wealth was slipping. And John started to lie. By 1971, the house was falling apart. So was the family. Helen had been diagnosed with hereditary syphilis, a condition she kept hidden from John for 18 years. It made her paranoid, reclusive, and she drank constantly, isolating herself upstairs.
The tough thing is syphilis can go to your brain. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's this type, but I know that it can happen.
That's
And
exactly right. And that's
it
also
makes
what happened to
Al Capone.
Al Capone.
Yep.
It makes her crazy. So she was reclusive and paranoid and having weird thoughts, drinking constantly, isolating herself. So she clearly was not right.
Yeah. It's a sad thing is that she just needs medicine and she could get better.
But she had waited too long. So
Yeah,
it's been
she didn't
18
know.
years.
That's a long time.
A very long time.
It's surprising she lived that like okay-ish. You know,
For
even
that
though she
long.
wasn't right, at least she was not like hospitalized or something.
She had contracted it from her first husband too. So it had been there
Yeah.
like from the beginning. So she'd been sick from the beginning.
Dang.
The woman John had married wasn't really there anymore. At the same time, John had lost his job, but he couldn't bring himself to tell anyone. Instead, he dressed in a suit each morning, left the house, and spent his days in train stations and libraries, pretending to be employed. He siphoned money from his elderly mother's account to pay bills. He encouraged his children to find part-time jobs, not to build character, but to help keep the lights on. And still, no one knew. In John's mind, he was trapped, crushed between financial ruin and a crumbling family. He believed God had stopped listening.
Lord.
Or maybe that his family had stopped listening to God. He was obsessed with morality, structure, salvation. And on November 9th, 1971, he made a decision. Their teenage daughter, Patricia, wanted to be an actress. That terrified John. He saw the theater as a pipeline to sin. His oldest son was bright but getting older and rebellious. His younger son was still innocent, still his. But John saw his family slipping away morally and spiritually, and his solution was monstrous. He convinced himself that killing them would spare their souls, that by sending them to heaven, he was saving them, that God would understand. On the morning of November 9th, 1971, he made lunch and started that plan. He shot his wife Helen in the back of the head while she drank her morning coffee.
Oh my God.
I know. Honestly, so brutal. Then he climbed to the attic apartment and shot his mother, Alma, just above the eye. He waited for his children to come home. Patricia, 16, came first. Then 13-year-old Frederick. He shot them both in the back of the head, one after the other.
It's
Calm.
not surprising to me that he can't look them in the face.
100%. Like, he's a coward.
Yeah.
There's no
Well,
going around
morally,
this.
if you're so moral and self-righteous, one of the things, and obviously I'm an atheist, but what I will say is thou shalt not kill is one of the first of the commandments, you know? So if
But
you,
he said that God would understand.
yeah, that's just not how religion works.
No,
or
it's
how
not.
Christianity works.
Well, honestly, in my opinion, because I'm also not religious, that is how religion works. They bend it to serve them at the time.
Well, that's because the Bible itself is a hearsay weapon, you know? It's
So
not
they just use
it's not the word of God. It's someone writing
it's the
down
word
those
of
words.
some old men that wanted their way.
Up to interpretation nowadays by the people that how they choose to interpret it. I think religion is good for some people and they really need that in their lives, and that's okay. And if that's what they believe, then to each their own, as long as you don't push it on other people.
Agreed.
Or hurt others
100%.
with your words.
Yes. Obviously, or kill people thinking that you're doing
Definitely
God a
don't do
service.
that.
No.
No.
That's a no-no. Then, as if none of it had happened, John List made himself a sandwich,
What?
drove to the bank, and closed out his accounts. Watched his son John Jr.'s soccer game and cheered from the stands.
You're joking.
No, this is all while John Jr.'s mom, grandma, sister, and brother are lying dead in his home.
Oh my God.
Can you even?
No.
When they got home, John Jr. fought back. He was the only one who did. There were signs of a struggle, multiple shots fired. But in the end, John List stood over his son's body and fired again.
Oh my gosh.
Brutality of that.
That's horrific.
He placed the bodies of his wife and children on sleeping bags in the ballroom, and his mother he left in the attic.
Yikes.
Then he wrote a letter, 5 pages, addressed to his pastor. He explained that he'd seen too much evil in the world and that this was the only way to save his family's souls.
That's disgusting.
Agreed. Before leaving, he turned on a religious radio station and walked away from everything he had ever been. It took almost a month for anyone to notice. John had written letters to the kids' schools, told them the family was in North Carolina visiting a sick relative. He canceled the mail, the milk, and the newspaper. Neighbors saw the lights on for weeks. Then they started to burn out. Police found the bodies on December 7th. They came through a basement window.
So long.
So long.
Oh.
An entire month.
Yikes.
Westfield had barely seen a violent crime in years. Now it was home to one of the worst family murders in New Jersey history. The ballroom, the blood, the eerie classical music still playing in the background. It was like a horror film, only real. The car was found abandoned at JFK Airport, but there were no tickets, no records. John List had removed himself from every family photo. The only known images of him were gone. A national manhunt began. Nothing turned up. It was like he'd never existed. And that's wild to plan. Like, I mean, if you think you're saving your family's souls and you're removing yourself from family you're methodical about this. This was not just a small plan.
To me, that feels like guilt.
Guilt, premeditation. He just was not happy with his life.
Yeah, to me, that seems like an admission of guilt almost, that he's taking himself off of there. And if he was going to save them from this world of sins, why? I assumed when you first started talking that it was a murder-suicide.
No, he's
like, how can you live with yourself?
Coward. He's a coward. He killed his family and then he's like,
peace out.
Peace out. I'm gonna go start a new life. And oh, did he?
No.
Mm-hmm. In truth, John List had taken a train to Michigan and then to Colorado. By early 1972, he was living in Denver under the name Robert Peter Clark, a real person, one of his college classmates. He got a job as an accountant, found a church, kept his head down, and by all accounts, he was polite, punctual, and even ran a carpool. In 1985, he remarried a woman named Dolores Miller. Coincidentally, this was my grandma's name. Miller was her maiden name. Dolores Miller, before she married my grandpa.
Strange.
Isn't that really weird?
Yeah.
They moved to Virginia, lived in a nice neighborhood, hosted neighbors, paid taxes, and said their prayers. For 17 years, John List was a ghost with a pulse. But that all changed in May of 1989. That year, America's Most Wanted aired a segment on the case. It had been 17 years, but the show wasn't guessing. They had something else, a clay sculpture.
Oh, that's different.
Forensic artist Frank Bender had created a bust of what John List might look like, based on aging trends and personality profiling. The result? Wow. Uncannily accurate.
Well, I can't wait to see photos.
It's crazy. When you see the photos, you might even recognize him because this is like such a famous case.
I recognize the name. I don't think I ever deep dived into this one.
It's wild. Just 2 weeks later, a neighbor in Virginia made a call. They recognized Bob Clark, the man who was too quiet, too polite, too off. On June 1st, 1989, John List was arrested at his accounting firm. He denied everything, even as the evidence stacked up. Eventually, the fingerprints gave him away, and John List finally confessed. At trial, he claimed he'd been mentally unwell.
Obvi.
That his obsessive compulsive personality disorder had left him feeling like there were only two choices: welfare or murder.
I think welfare might have been a better choice.
Oh, he didn't think so. He said welfare was too shameful, too public, and so he chose murder.
Murder was the right one? Okay.
He, in his head, that was.
All right, bud.
The jury didn't buy it.
No.
On April 12th, 1990, John List was convicted of 5 counts of first-degree murder. The judge gave him 5 consecutive life sentences. No parole, no second chance.
Good.
He died in prison in 2008 of pneumonia at 82 years old.
Wow.
And can you even? He had 18 years out and about after he erased himself and killed his entire family.
That is horrific.
Agreed.
What about his other wife?
He only, it doesn't really say. I'm sure they divorced, but she had no clue that any of this was his past.
Yeah, of course. That's wild.
So wild. Over the years, John List's story has inspired movies, TV episodes, true crime series. A man so calculated, so cold that he murdered his family and went on living like he hadn't. But what really lingers isn't the violence. It's the silence that followed. 18 years of picnics, church sermons, conversations over coffee, all with a man who'd committed the unthinkable. How do you hide something like that for so long? And how do you look in the mirror and not see a monster?
Especially if you're a so-called God-fearing man.
Right. Like, you didn't do this for God. You did this for your selfishness yourself.
And most likely counseling other people within their church.
I mean, this was
all these people don't know that this whole time there's a serial killer lurking
with them. It's like, Jesus, man.
I hate it.
If today's story left you uneasy, good. Some stories should.
Wow.
Sources were Wikipedia, America's Most Wanted, Unsolved Mysteries, CNN, Cold Case, and the History Channel.
Good.
Good.
I like the end of that.
Easy, it should.
Oh my God. That is so funny.
But seriously.
Hell of a tagline.
Right? The man, and he got a diet of old age, basically. I mean, pneumonia, but at 82, he lived a full life.
A long life for someone.
He didn't get that option to his family.
So much time on the outside, too. Like, without being in prison. He really got to do whatever he wanted.
Until America's Most Wanted. Thank you, John Walsh.
I'm still saying the fact that he cut himself out of the photos makes me feel like, I mean, I get that this was to hide his identity, but at the same time, was it that, or was this him feeling guilty and taking himself out of this because he was no longer with that family?
I think it was so that no one could identify him.
You think so?
I'm pretty positive. I mean, this guy was not, I don't think he felt guilty. I truly don't. He lived his life like he did the best thing ever for himself.
Well, and he allowed himself to fall in love again and everything.
He got remarried.
So
he
gross.
was going to church, having carpools.
I hate it.
And before this, he had lost his job when the bank fell and he couldn't tell his family. He was pretending to go to work, dressing in suits. Like, I mean, this guy was just okay with lies. I do not think he had a conscience. There was something wrong with him.
Yeah, most definitely.
But that
Wow.
was my case for today.
I had just looked up, by the way, the bust. It is uncanny.
Isn't that uncanny what they can do?
Yeah, that's crazy.
What
What did they base? They just based that on what they would assume.
What people had told him he looked like, because they could only go off of eyewitness accounts of people who knew him.
That is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, you're going to be able to see that on our Instagram page
and TikTok. Look out for those.
Yeah, we'll definitely post those. Well, my case also has a name to it, rather than a lot of times we use like the person's name or something like that, or no name at all. But my case is called The Lover in the Attic. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay.
I think.
Hold on to your hat.
I'm holding.
Walburga Osterreich, who preferred to go by Dolly, and that's how I will refer to her for the rest of this podcast, was born in 1880 to German immigrant parents after arriving in the United States. She grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and lived in a community of fellow German immigrants. She grew up poor, and at the age of 12, she had to find a job. She found herself working at a textile mill that was owned by Fred Osterreich. Fred is also a German immigrant who has become quite successful and owned a few businesses by the age of 17. He also had a habit of hiring other immigrants. Dolly was described as pretty, outgoing, and she made friends easily. She immediately caught the eye of Fred, and the two started dating. Again, she's 12 years old and he's 17.
That is repulsive.
But also remember, folks grew up faster back then, and the social norms of when people got together was a lot younger. 12 is far too young, but people were getting married at 16, you know?
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
The two didn't get married, though, until she was 17 years old. In 1903, Dolly and Fred had been married for 15 years. The couple resided in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. For all that they had in common, they possessed quite different temperaments. Fred was very frugal and was strong-willed. He owned a factory in which about 60 women worked, manufacturing clothes. He often went through the factory demanding that each worker work faster and better. Dolly, as forelady, would frequently follow behind him and soothe the wounded and anxious employees. The Osterreichs seemed like they worked as a team at work, but at home, they had marital problems. Dolly is in her mid-30s and now seemed to crave sex a lot more and more frequently than Fred was able to, with his long hours at the factory especially. She began to seek to have her physical needs met in extramarital affairs. One day, Dolly was at the factory when a sewing machine broke down. Notified of the problem, the Singer Sewing Machine Company sent a repairman to the Osterreich factory. He was Otto Sandhuber, a blue-eyed, short, and slightly built teenager. At this time, he was around age 16 or 17 years old. We don't know exactly what his age was because he was adopted after the war. So not long afterward, Dolly requested that Singer sent Otto to her house to fix the sewing machine in her bedroom. When Otto arrived at the house, Dolly opened the door, heavily perfumed, and wearing a silk robe and stockings with slippers.
So she was prepared for this man?
Oh, very. She led the teenage repairman into her bedroom, where she watched, sitting on the bed, as he worked on the machine. Dolly made sure that Otto would notice that she was fully nude under that robe, and she was and she was seducing the young man, which turned into a day filled with passion. For the next 3 years, the factory forelady and the repairman carried on their secret love affair. Sometimes Dolly met Otto at his boarding room, and on occasions they would frequent a hotel. Otto would also visit Dolly when she stayed home from the factory, pretending to be ill, or if her husband was out for the night at a lodge meeting. Dolly and Otto were insatiable. Otto claimed that one time the two made love no less than 8 times in a single day.
My God.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
I was just about to say, how do you have time for that?
They broke to eat and use the restroom. That's all I can say. However, they couldn't go on as they were doing. It was costly to get the hotel rooms, and Fred was surely going to catch on. And a neighbor began noticing the frequency of Otto's comings and goings, pun intended, and mentioned them to Fred. Fred confronted Dolly immediately. She explained that a book salesman had been pestering her, but she had put a stop to this fellow's visits. Fred seemed to accept that answer. At one point, she told a neighbor that he was her brother who was down on his luck, and she was helping out feed him when he was coming by the house.
That is not what I would think a brother would do.
Sure not. After this incident, Dolly came up with a plan and offered to Otto that he quit his job and move into her attic in a secret room and become her full-time lover.
What?
Being that Otto didn't have many prospects and he was completely in love and obsessed with Dolly, he accepted this. He also had dreams of becoming a writer, and this allowed him to follow this dream and hone his craft. The attic was cleaned up, furnished with an oil lamp, a comfortable mattress, and a chamber pot. Otto brought reading material as well as a pencil and paper into his new home. During the day, Otto did household chores, sweeping floors, dusting, washing dishes, peeling vegetables, and performing various domestic duties. Dolly put a padlock on the door to the attic, and she would carry the key herself so Fred wouldn't be able to slip up there. Her husband asked her about the padlock, and she easily replied, "I just want to keep my furs safe." You know, as one does.
Mm-hmm.
About a year passed when Fred Oesterreich became troubled by odd noises he's hearing around the house. He and his wife were in bed one night when he thought he heard something like a man clearing his throat. "What was that?" Fred asked his wife. "You're imagining things. Now go to sleep." Fred settled back down against the covers next to his wife.
Lighting.
Yeah.
Oh my
Suddenly, he bolts upright again. "I'm not imagining that." "You are certainly imagining things," Dolly said. "It's only a rat or a mouse. If you want to know something, you're just drinking too much." Dolly explained that the missing food would be due to Fred's drinking and memory, and that the answer was that he was the one that ate it. And he just didn't remember because he was drunk.
Wow, she is messing with him.
Oh, yeah. Otto didn't really have any friends or family, so no one noticed that he was missing. This all went on for 5 long years until 1917. That's when Fred tells Dolly they are moving out of Milwaukee and they are moving to Los Angeles, California. You see, Fred was getting very paranoid and convinced someone was living in their house. Go figure.
Go figure, because there was someone living in your house, Fred.
One time, Fred was working in the garden and happened to look up to the window in the attic. And Dolly had repeatedly warned Otto, don't go near the windows. But he had taken a look outside, and at that exact moment, the two men saw each other. And for a split second, just for a split second before Otto panicked and pulled back. "God damn it," Fred yelled as he raced into the house. "I know someone is in this attic." And there was someone in the attic, obviously.
Yes, there was. 100%.
He said, "I saw someone moving in the window." Dolly said, "Okay, I'll go up to the attic and investigate." When she came back down, she expressed concern for Fred's mental condition, telling him that he had been working way too hard at the factory and he is seeing things. She took it so far that she made him go see a doctor, and the physician told him to start taking things easier and wrote a prescription for tranquilizers.
My God.
Frank was still freaking out, and he said, "That's it. We're moving. I can't do this, not one more day." So now they go to Los Angeles to look for homes, and Dolly voices one non-negotiable thing they needed to move in, and that is that there must be an attic in their new home.
I knew that was coming.
The thing is, it was very difficult to find a home with an attic in LA. But Dolly ended up getting lucky, and sure enough, they found one. They bought the home and then went back to Milwaukee to pack. Dolly made sure that Otto went to the new home early, so he had time to get situated before Fred arrived. He also got a job during this time and tried to settle in. He mentions that this was a very odd and lonely time for him. Over the course of the next several months, Otto continued to do what he always did. Passion with Dolly by day, pulp fiction writer by night. He even managed to publish some of his stories, which she gained money from and helped provide assistance for Dolly and the cost of food and such. Later, Otto would say, oh, and this is sad, that he was willing to live cooped up in an attic in order to be near the only person in the entire world who cared if he lived or died.
Okay, that is really tragic.
I know. It was August 22nd, 1922. The Osterreichs had been out for the evening. When they came back, they were in a heated argument. Otto heard them as it started to escalate. Then he heard a loud thud and Dolly screaming. Otto thought Fred was beating Dolly, but actually she had slipped on a throw rug. Fearing for the love of his life, he went down a small hole that actually led into their bedroom closet. He found 2 of Fred's .25 caliber pistols. He grabbed one of the guns and went to the kitchen to confront Fred. As soon as they saw each other, everything started to click. Fred realizes that this man, who used to work for him, has been living in his attics for the last 10 years. And he's been supporting him this entire time. He becomes furious, and the 2 end up getting in a physical altercation. Then the gun went off. The first bullet hit the ceiling, and the next 3 hit Fred directly into his chest, killing him instantly. It is important to note that Fred was never able to tell his version of the next events, so what we have to go on are the words of Dolly and Otto, plus the physical evidence. Dolly and Otto start to panic, and he decides that he should lock Dolly in the closet, which locks from the outside. This would work as an alibi, since she couldn't have killed someone if she was locked inside a closet. They came up with a plan to stage a robbery. Otto took a few expensive items from around the house, including a diamond watch that Fred was wearing. Then he went upstairs to hide, since he knew the neighbors would call the police, considering that there were gunshots and a lot of screaming. When the police showed up, they found Fred's lifeless body on the floor, and Dolly was inside the closet. When they asked what happened, she said they were robbed, they killed Fred, and locked her in. The police were very skeptical about her story, but since they didn't really have any evidence to challenge her story, they had to let her go. So essentially, Dolly and Otto just got away with murder. Now, you would think that Dolly and Otto's relationship would be normal now, considering her husband's no longer around.
Right.
But that's not what ends up happening at all. Instead, Dolly purchases another home with the money that she got after Fred's death. And this new home has what in it?
An attic.
An attic. Life went on like it always did. He'd mess around with Dolly in the daytime and write during the night. Otto lived in the attic again. No, I don't know why he would continue with the same arrangements. They didn't have to sneak around anymore. But for Dolly, the reason was quite clear. She had met another man named Herman Shapiro. He was the lawyer that she hired to settle her late husband's estate. Dolly was a sensuous woman, and the 2 began flirting. Then it progressed to dating, and during a meeting, Dolly pulled out an obviously expensive diamond-studded man's watch out of her purse. She handed it to Herman and said, "Here, I want you to have this. It belonged to dear Fred, as a thank you for the work that he did on his case." Chief of Detectives Herman Klein, also another Herman. Seems odd that there's two of them in this story, but
I was going to say.
Somehow he learned that Herman Shapiro was walking around with a diamond-studded watch. He knew this was among the reported stolen items from the supposed robbery. Suspicions were aroused, so the chief of detectives talked with the attorney, who obligingly reported the story of the grateful Dolly and her generous gift. He also handed the watch over to the detective, who took it immediately to Dolly. She said, "Oh, I actually found that after the robbery, so I guess it wasn't stolen." Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
No, I found it. It's fine. Once again, due to the long hours that Herman, the attorney, was working, she became unsatisfied, even though she still had her sex slave up in the attic. She started paying less attention to Otto and went out and got another successful man to have on the side, named Roy Klum. Roy was a successful lawyer and an aspiring actor. She knew that the guns that she had from the murder were still a liability, but she didn't want anything suspicious around just in case the police showed up again. So she talked to Roy and convinced him to protect her from the suspicion that she might have murdered Fred, even though she claims to have had nothing to do with it. But it would really be helpful if he could just dispose of one of the guns. He didn't question this at all, and he agreed to dispose of the gun. He took it and threw it in the La Brea tar pits. So she still had to get rid of the other gun, but she couldn't ask Roy to dispose of it because that would just seem too shady. So she went to one of her neighbors, told him the same story that she told Roy, and asked if he could help her. You know, this poor gal just needs a little help.
Yeah, she's poor her.
So he agreed to do so and buried the gun deep in his backyard. Dolly now had 3 men to satisfy her needs: Otto, Herman, and Roy. A few years later, something made Dolly want to end things with Roy, and he became furious. Due to his rage, he decided to go to the police and tell them about the gun that Dolly asked him to dispose of. And he told them exactly where it was. The police went and retrieved the gun, then went to Dolly's home and arrested her. The neighbor who disposed of the other gun saw her being arrested and didn't want any ties to whatever was going on. So he told police that he also had a gun in his backyard, and the officers dug it up. Herman Shapiro visited Dolly in jail, but she's not worried about herself. She was panicking knowing that Otto was still in the attic and he didn't know what was going on, and she was worried he wouldn't be able to eat anything and starve. She told Herman that he was her stepbrother and he was living in the attic, and asked him if he could go over there to give him some food. She told him all he had to do was knock on the ceiling in her bedroom closet and he would know to come out. Which also, what the fuck? Why does he have to have a secret knock on the ceiling to know that it was safe to come out?
Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. This whole thing is weird.
Here's the thing, though. Herman agrees. Yeah, no problem. I'll head on over there. And
okay.
I'm going to make sure to post the pictures on the Instagram page, but these attic doors that he's living in are like tiny openings. And they're hidden. You can't really tell. They have molding on them and everything, so they're not obvious at all. And again, Herman didn't question anything. He just agreed to bring this man some food. When Otto came down...
The man in the attic, some food.
Yeah. When Otto came down, he told Herman everything he had been doing with Dolly. Herman was upset and told Otto to leave the home and never to return. Herman then went and bailed Dolly out of jail. And considering the fact that the guns were so eroded after being buried for so long, they couldn't find any evidence of the guns linking them to Dolly, and there weren't any ballistics to compare. So the charges against her were dropped. She has now gotten away with this for the second time. Dolly continues to date Herman, who gives her an ultimatum. She's no longer allowed to see Otto. She agrees on this condition as long as he would help Otto find work. Having her lover find her other attic lover a job.
Attic lover.
This woman is wild. Herman finds him a job as a janitor.
Okay.
And from there, Otto moves to Vancouver, Canada, where he worked as a porter. He soon married a Canadian woman named Matilde, and he had no more contact with Dolly. Somewhere along the way, he changes his name to Walter Klein. I don't have any information on why he did that, but he does. Then he moves back to LA for a time with his wife. Years pass. Then one day in 1930, Herman Shapiro appears at the police station. He and Dolly had a falling out over money, he told them. He claimed that she threatened him, and he had drawn up an affidavit, and he was turning that over to them. That affidavit contained the story allegedly told to Herman by Otto on the day that he wanted to bring him food. The polite and quiet Otto was arrested for murder, and so was his former lover, Dolly, again. The press had a field day with this sensational case. Otto was nicknamed the Batman because he hid in the attic for so long, and Dolly was praised for her looks, and they played up her sexual desires. Earl Seeley Wakeman was the lawyer that defended Otto. Wakeman was a shrewd attorney who specialized in defending accused murderers. Otto had, of course, confessed to the killing, but claimed that it all happened over the struggle for the gun, which makes me think of that song from Chicago. They both reach for the gun, for the gun. Anyway, Otto pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Wakeman played on the jury's sympathies, saying that his client had been a tool in the hands of a much older, more sophisticated, and dominant woman. The defendant in the courtroom was no longer a fresh-faced teenage male virgin who had originally caught Dolly's eye. He was a pale-skinned, small, plain-looking middle-aged man. He had a receding hairline and wore round, black-horned rimmed spectacles. He also had a nervous twitch that added to the effect of making him look pitiable. Otto's testimony was recorded. Otto described an average day for himself when he lived in the Los Angeles Osterreich house in the years preceding the killing. I made up the beds. The couple was sleeping in separate bedrooms at that point, and then I would change the linen about 2 times a week. They loved to sleep clean. And I made up the beds for them. And I put away the clothes, and I dusted Fred's things because he had some beautiful things. And I would keep them in order for him and dust them and dust his shoes. You know, he would look neat always. And I would wash the dishes when he wasn't home. And if he was home, he would wash them. And Mrs. Osterreich would dry them because I couldn't. I would wash the vegetables clean, and they were clean. Everyone praised her by how clean things were. And then I scrubbed the floor. I kept it clean. I kept the floor neat. You know, she loved to have a beautiful floor, and I dusted it. He took so much pride in the housework that he did for Dolly. You can tell, though, by the way that he spoke, that he was a little emotionally stunted. He also described himself as a sex slave.
Oh.
And that he was obsessed and infatuated with Dolly. Primarily, he talked also about how sometimes he would go on hunger strike when Dolly wouldn't give him attention because it was his only form of getting attention from her since he had nothing. And Dolly would get angry at him. But then they would have sex again and things would be okay. But they would have like multiple times a day sex all the time. Dolly needed a lot. It was
exhausting, girl.
Exhausting. It was clear that he had lived a kind of sad existence. It was also clear that he was not a violent man. He was very meek and quiet, and like I said, very pale because he lived in an attic for a decade. The jury did not convict him of murder, but they did find him guilty of manslaughter. However, the statute of limitations for that offense had already expired, letting Otto leave court a free man. In the case of Dolly, the jury was unable to reach a verdict, but the majority were in favor of an acquittal. In 1936, the indictment against her was dismissed. In a book that was published in 1958 called The Attic Lover, by that time, Dolly was said to be living over a garage in a rundown section of Los Angeles. As noted, she passed the last of her years living in a sort of attic area, which is ironic.
Mm-hmm.
Celia Rasmussen wrote that Dolly died in 1961, less than 2 weeks after marrying her second husband, a man she had known for 30 years named Ray Burt Hedrick. He had been her business manager for many years. When she died, all of her estate went to Hedrick because a will had been drawn up in 1953. At no point was Otto ever mentioned in her will, which I think is kind of shitty.
That is super shitty.
She got a shit ton of money when her husband died, by the way. We don't have any information on what happened to Otto. The hope is that he lived out his days peacefully with his wife. This was a story of no one getting what they wanted or needed. It's the human condition that makes you wonder, in this day and age, how things would have gone for Dolly without needing to rely on men to fund her life. And with there being more open sex positivity in the world and less stigma on divorce, what could have happened? But she did commit statutory rape, and that's never okay.
Also, I'm unsure if she would have done anything different because after he died, she still wanted Otto to be in an attic.
But originally, if you go back to the very beginning when she was 12 and had to start going to work, and then, spotted this man who had all this money owning this factory and then married him right away. I just wonder if she grew up in a different way, if things might have been different. So many times in my cases, especially because they're older, the women are left with little anonymity and they have so few options. So when you have a motivated, strong woman, they usually feel pushed in a corner and see no other way besides murder to get out of their situations, I don't condone murder, obviously.
Lies. She does.
And by most accounts, Dolly was kind of a manipulating jerk. But we all come from somewhere, and growing up differently may have shaped things in some way. Then I think of poor Otto. He was so manipulated. No one really wins in these cases, but we can always learn from them. And that was the case of the lover in the attic. My sources were Medium, crimelibrary.org, LAist, Wikipedia, Milwaukee Magazine, and Murderpedia.
I don't want a man in my attic.
No, man, you keep those guys in the basement.
Have a basement. That's creepier in my opinion.
Or a shed.
I could go for a shed.
I'll let Dustin know.
Yeah.
I'm just beside myself with the fact that this all took place, that she moved multiple states and homes with this man living in her attic. And you're a human being. Like, obviously you're going to have to walk around and cough or sniffle or something. Right. So obviously and this made her husband insane. Like, he thought he was going crazy. And she just gaslit him up.
Gaslighting him, and he was just like,
yeah.
What's this padlock for? I don't know. Don't go up there. He's like, okay.
I don't want anybody stealing my furs. Like, what the fuck? It's wild.
So wild.
So, shout out to all those attic lovers.
Ooh. If that's your kink, like, we're not shaming you.
No, there is no kink
Just
shame.
no murder. No murder.
No murdering. And maybe not like locking people in.
Yeah, that's probably
places.
not a good idea either.
I mean, that's one of the things they like mention over and over, how pale he was and how like sickly he
because
looked.
he never saw this daylight ever.
He wasn't even supposed to go near the windows.
Mm-hmm.
So he just had to like stay up there. And also, on a side note, and this is fucked up that this is what my brain's thinking of, but he had to live in there with a chamber pot too.
Ew.
Yeah. And then he would,
is so
in the
gross.
daytime, go and deal with that while he cleaned the house. And this whole time, Fred thought Dolly was doing such a good job keeping everything clean.
Best homemaker.
In the meantime, she's having sex with the teenage sewing machine worker upstairs. I just can't.
The way I can't even.
Also, 8 times in a day, Jesus Christ.
That is so many times. So many times.
And then this was like regular though. He talks about it. It's like all the time. And that's part of like what made him infatuated with her, is that he was like craving it because that's what their thing was.
Can't.
I know. It's nuts. Anyway, that was my case this week, and I will post pictures of Dolly and all of her lovers on our Instagram page, and it will also be on our TikTok, and you will see all these men that just couldn't get enough of Dolly, and Dolly couldn't get enough of men. Cracking myself up over here.
Oh,
okay,
man.
so do follow us on all of the social medias. Comment on anything. Feel free to slip into our DMs to tell us of any cases you would like us to cover. And we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.